And what the hell, everything for Monday, April 12th, 2021. Hello. Coming up on the podcast, Why I'm No Longer in Radio, introducing the 5-year plan, the epiphany that led to the 5-year plan. I'm going to talk about also, is Post Malone the rock and roll hero we need or deserve? Is Brazil's Jesus bigger than Rio's Jesus? And things I learned today, plus a new revamped 420 break, all coming up on a brand new What the Hell Everything. What the hell, everything? All right, guys, welcome to the new What the Hell Everything. My name is Smitty, and this first podcast, I think everybody knows that I did this with Tim Logan for obvious reasons. No longer with Tim Logan. He's staying on at the radio station. I'm going to lay out all of my plans, but real quick, just talk about leaving the radio station. I have nothing bad to say about those guys. I just decided it's time to move on. Radio, I talk about in my head, and I've talked to a couple of people, that it's just like I broke up. It's like I broke up from radio, you know? It's just one of those things. It was one thing when I started. It's another thing now, and I wish nothing but those guys the best. So if you're listening to the radio, you want to listen to Tim Logan, I love that guy like a brother. Doing that show was a life highlight. But when you get to the point where you're just stressed to the max, and I'm not going to talk about the job, I'm not going to talk about what stressed me out, but stressed to the max. And, you know, what am I going to do with my life? What, you know, when I realized I was leaving the radio station, I had all these things I wanted to do. So let's talk about the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is I want to build this podcast to the best of my ability. Now, when I say I've had this in my head forever, for 4 years now, I've been growing this podcast, and I want to get it to the point of successful. What do I think is successful as far as the podcast goes? I would love the opportunity for people to listen and watch it and enjoy what I'm doing. I also like to try to make some investment back. I don't think that's asking too much. I want people to enjoy it. I want it to be successful enough where I can do it, where I don't have to worry about, do I have to hawk this new board? Do I have to sell these cameras? You know what I mean? So that's successful to me. Can this fund itself? So we'll talk about the epiphany coming up in just a little bit, but build the podcast to the best of my ability. The brand new What the Hell Everything will be Tuesdays and Thursdays on YouTube. I will also be doing a Friday night Facebook Live podcast with phones. I got this set up for phones, so we're going to have guests in the studio. We're going to have guests via Zoom live streaming Friday night Facebook Live. So that's the brand new What the Hell Everything. Also got that Six Packs on Mars podcast that I got going on. Smithhole Cinemas once a month, movie recreations, the We Three Smiths long-form podcast. Gonna have something called the Smith-Faced Hotline on that same phone number. New podcast coming as well. Audio versions up on Spotify. Have a Patreon page. I'll be sharing the link with that. On that Patreon page, if you enjoy this sort of thing, mind you, as a patron on the Patreon page, it's going to get you behind the scenes, behind the scenes of Smithhole Cinemas, movie companions for those, Stuttering Smitty reels, extra podcast for Six Packs on Mars, video editions of the Rock and Roll Roundtable. That's a podcast that's coming back, if you remember that from years ago. Live recordings of the What the Hell Everything on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those will stream the live recordings on the Patreon page, and I'll have phones going on those as well. So that's what I say when I mean I want to have a successful podcast. I want to have people that enjoy it. I want to entertain you, and I feel like you like what I do. So that brings us to the 5-year plan. I've given myself to the age of 50 to make this podcast successful. So another thing I've wanted to do, because I've been telling people I'm basically doing what I've always wanted to do. These are huge bucket list items for me. I've always wanted to do an Irish hiking tour for a year-long hiking tour in Ireland where I podcast from all of these different pubs, old school pubs. I watched this old man documentary on Netflix about Irish pubs, and I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. So it's always been in my head. Then I've always wanted to move to Montana. So that's what's going to happen when at the age of 50, having a big-ass 50-year birthday bash and moving my ass to Montana after a year-long Irish hiking pub podcast tour. Clearly, this hiking tour is going to cost money. It's going to be one of those things where I'm going to go regardless, and I'm going to save as much money as I can regardless to go, but am I going to eat trail mix every other day and sometimes sleep on the side of the road, or am I going to not have to worry about stopping the trip short? If one thing goes wrong, everything is a catastrophe if one thing goes wrong. So here's the thing. I'm not asking for money, but I'm asking for help. If you like me, if you like what I do, check the podcast stuff out. Give it a like, give it a view, even just turn your phone down if you don't want to listen to my stupid voice or anything, but turn it down. Give it a view. Give it a like. I've had people ask me, there's not anything against these people, and I know it's somewhat normal for some to ask permission. I've had people, hey, is it okay if I share this stuff? Yes, you always have my permission. And the same goes for any of your other friends, anybody else that you know that is a creator of any sort, and they're doing some sort of thing on social media. Those likes and shares and comments and interaction, all it is so helpful. So if you like me, if you like what I do, you want to see this Irish pub tour happen, you want to check out the Patreon page, that's cool. If not, I have this real thing. It took me a long time to be able to be comfortable with asking for money. And it's not that I'm asking for money. I want to entertain you in return. Now, I am asking for money because I do have a crowdfunding set up as well, capped at $40,000. If that can happen, if you are not interested in going on Patreon and you still want to contribute to the crowdfunding, we'll share the link. I'll share the link, and it would be awesome. But the likes, the views, the comment, anything like that helps. The more eyes and ears you can bring to the podcast to help me out, that would be super awesome if you dig what I'm doing. And then, like I said, the year-long hiking pub podcast tour, when that ends, I'm going to come back to Michigan for a little bit. Then I'm moving to Montana. That's another one. So if the podcast is successful, I'll continue in Montana. And I'll probably continue it one way or the other anyway, because it's not like I'm ever going to shut up. So in some form or another, I'll probably keep the podcast going when I move to Montana. But it doesn't even need to be Montana, to tell you the truth. It could be anywhere out west in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountain, like Wyoming or Colorado, anywhere out there. I'm a happy fella. But, Montana, it's got a little place in my heart. So that is the 5-year plan. If you want to support it, super awesome. I'll be sharing the crowdfunding and the Patreon page. So much stuff available on that. So give it a like, follow, subscribe, give it a view. Everything helps. And I want to thank you guys. Thank you very much. All right, let's talk about the epiphany. The epiphany that I had when I figured all of this out. Because, again, it was one of those things where all of this stuff that I've talked about, getting a successful podcast, doing this Irish hiking tour, moving to Montana, this all has been on my bucket list. Now, I had an iPhone 2 years ago, and I got rid of it for a Google Plus phone, which was the worst fucking phone of all time. I hated it so much. And what I do is I punish myself, or at least I punish myself with this phone. I said, this is because it was the second Android that I had that sucked, and I hated it. And I said, I will never, ever get an Android again. And in order to remind myself that I'll never get an Android again, I just kept it and hated it and kept my heart filled with hatred for 2 years just to remind myself. Anyway, I got my iPhone back. Now, Apple, through the cloud or whatever, keeps your settings on your weather app. And I just, for old time's sake, because I went to Montana a few years ago, road tripped out there solo, which was one of the best things ever. So when I got the new iPhone, it kept the weather settings in Missoula, Montana and such. And I just said, aw. Now, right after I quit at the radio station, I'm sitting here and I know I'm going to do all this stuff. I have the 5-year plan sort of anyway, it's always been a thing. But then I just looked at the weather again and saw Missoula. And I just was down here in the Smitty hole basement. And I said, oh my God. And I jumped up and cheered like I've never been. I don't know the last time I was ever that excited, because in that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I said, oh, I'm doing all this. And, I, at the same time, had the epiphany of how I'm going to do this podcast, because people have told me for years, why don't you just do your show on the podcast? Even when I was not at the radio station before, and people were suggesting that, and I'm like, oh, in my head, and I think a lot of people, like podcasting is one thing. Like, obviously, I'm not going to play music on here, but maybe on Spotify. Like, I've always thought about podcasting as one thing and radio's another. Like, but the idea that I could just talk shit about whatever I want, I don't know why in that moment, but I just said, oh, because down here in the Smith hole, whenever I'm doing anything solo podcasting, when I was whatever, it always just felt weird, like I was talking to myself. And I'm like, oh, headphones. That makes everything better. So it's, doing a show, going crazy talking to yourself. Doing a show, going crazy talking to yourself. Doing a show, going crazy talking. And I said, oh my God, I can totally do my show on the podcast, just like it's the same. If you've ever wanted and wondered what uncensored Smitty is like, you got the opportunity to check it out. And I don't mean language as much as I mean just ideas in general. The kind of stuff that you just can't say on the radio. It's probably the best way to put it. And when I say I'm better suited for the internet, I've always done like long form ideas. When I say long form in radio, you're really capped at a talk time a lot of times. And I'm better at long form ideas. I'm better at ideas that take a long time and talk breaks that take a long time. That's just me. I'm wordy, as consultants used to say. My dad called me mouth for a good reason. So that's the new What the Hell Everything podcast. But the epiphany was one of the more profound things that happened, because I literally jumped up and cheered and fist pumped and said, oh my God, I know what I'm going to do. Honestly, the idea that you just know what you're going to do is huge. Going to hit that actually later on the 420 break, but that's the epiphany, man. If you like the show on the radio, you might love the show. Love the show on the podcast, What the Hell Everything. Let's move on and talk about non-epiphany stuff, okay? All right, I saw this last week, and it just made me laugh, because essentially it's about poop, but it's about Metamucil, and it's about, because I take Metamucil all the time, and I try to always convert people into Metamucil, and was converted into Metamucil by somebody else. So that's what happens with Metamucil. It's one of those things you just try to get your buddies into because you have such good poops. But this video essentially is titled, "A Student Drank 2 Liters of Fiber Supplement for Dinner," essentially Metamucil, and he said this is what happened to his intestines. So let's watch this and be horrified.
A student drank 2 liters of fiber supplement for dinner. This is what happened.
Why? Why do you have to eat like that?
CJ
it's so gross.
is a 22-year-old man presenting to the emergency room with nausea, vomiting, and constipation. He tells the admitting nurse that it was only a matter of time before he would take the biggest dump of his life. He had been building up since he hadn't had a bowel movement for at least the last
It's probably
3
so
weeks.
painful.
You see, CJ was a student who was obsessed with health. He was studying nutrition, and after reading articles on the internet, he was convinced all of his health problems like allergies, headaches, and insomnia were because his colon needed to be cleansed. He liked cereals and grains and fruit, and those have some fiber, but it's not enough.
No.
He remembered all those times in his life when his bowel movements were inconsistent, both in timing and in feeling on the way out. If there's skid marks in the toilet, then it must be skidding in my colon too, and causing all of my health problems, he thought. CJ eventually came to his own conclusion that for every day of his life that he didn't get 30 grams of fiber,
how much the average human just thinks about their own poop.
You know, large tubs of psyllium.
How much does the average human think about their own poop?
He tried a few spoonfuls mixed in with water, and for a few days he felt great. His movements were regular and consistent. He could feel the cleanse happening. One day he told himself that he was ready. He prepped his body and mixed at least 30 scoops of psyllium husk fiber with 2 liters of water. He watched it congeal into a thick jelly before putting it down. Immediately after finishing 2 liters of fiber supplement, CJ could feel his stomach expand. He had trouble drinking it because the fiber had a consistency of jello, so he had to chew it to swallow it. As the hours passed, CJ's stomach kept expanding. He felt full and didn't need to eat dinner. But then he realized the fiber supplement tasted like orange jelly and thought to make peanut butter and fiber supplement jelly sandwiches for a midnight snack and have the cleanest colon possible. Only then can my body
Also,
absorb
that's
best
the
and
least
healthiest
spreadable.
nutrients
Look at
during
that
the day.
fucking peanut butter. That's the least spreadable peanut butter of all time. Remind me to never get... What the fuck is that? Jif what? Jif extra chunky?
To eat dinner,
Extra
but then he realized the
crunch?
fiber supplement
Oh,
tasted
natural.
like
That's
orange
why.
jelly
Shut up.
And thought to make peanut butter and
Way to
fiber
go,
supplement jelly
non-spreadable peanut
sandwiches
butter.
for a midnight snack and have the cleanest colon possible. Only then can my body absorb the best and healthiest nutrients during the day. But finally, the hurt became too strong. He could feel a giant lump in his abdomen with his hands, and when he pushed just a little bit on it, a sour taste would flood into his mouth from under his tongue, and he could feel his stomach cramp and shake. He would sit on the toilet until he could feel pins and needles prickling his feet, and nothing would move. He could feel a burning at the base of his neck. The pain became too unbearable, and he realized that something was happening as he calls for 911.
Yep.
And he's brought to the emergency room, where we are now.
Oh, here comes an ad. Boom, cut.
When it comes to trimming your balls, always use a right
Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below the waist.
Honestly, I'm positive I haven't,
Some
like,
of
skip it, but I'm positive I have not,
At
talked about
examination,
shaving my balls at
doctors
all.
found
Of course
that
I
CJ
did.
was agitated. He's
course I
breathing.
did, on the
He's
radio.
conscious and responsive. So stool fiber helps stimulate gut.
There's so much
bacterial
science
growth,
in here.
which will
I'm
help with
completely
digestion.
lost,
All
but
of this
I'm
giving
getting it a
almost
little bit.
Only benefits to the GI tract, but something's wrong. If psyllium is mixed without enough water, it becomes a thick, jelly-like structure. CJ told the doctors that when he took 2 liters of fiber supplement, he couldn't actually drink it, but he had to chew it because it had become like a jello. You see, when psyllium is mixed with some water, it becomes thick. That's the way it's supposed to work, by putting water into the stool. But the problem is, when it becomes like a jelly, adding more water doesn't actually cause it to dissolve or break down. Even squeezing it with your hands might not break it up. And because the GI tract isn't a rigid solid like the bones, a block of psyllium can expand in the stomach and in the intestines and push up against the sides of the walls and block all movement through. And because the psyllium expands and doesn't dissolve when more water is added, this blockage can cause an impaction. Even if the stomach and the intestines are big, long muscles, squeezing the
I'm
psyllium
fairly
won't
certain
cut
that
it
this
up.
guy
Adding
that
more
is
water isn't
narrating
going to
is
push
the
it
guy
down
that
because
did
it's
it.
larger than the hole
I could
that
be
it's
wrong.
in, and it keeps expanding. If it stays there, not only will nothing pass through, but as things keep piling higher, it can stretch the walls of the stomach and the intestines and limit the flow of blood. And because the gastrointestinal tract is a muscle that needs lots of oxygen to function,
I
disrupting
mean,
blood
long story short, it just blocks you up, and you can't poop, and it hurts a lot. I mean, that's long story short. Don't do stupid things, and then wonder why you're in the hospital with the worst constipation of all time. I saw this story out of Wyoming. You know, I'm talking about hiking and moving out to Wyoming and getting more involved in nature and more out and about. And I started that actually a couple, 3 years ago. So I don't even think I fit into the pandemic wilderness explorers. I just didn't start doing this all willy-nilly. You know, I was in the Army. I was all about road marches and hiking and everything. That being said, pandemic wilderness explorers are straining search and rescue. Basically, and this specific story is out of Wyoming. Kenna Tanner and her team are the search and rescue, the tip-top search and rescue crew in Wyoming, and they're talking about cases like a woman who got tired and didn't feel like finishing her hike, so they had to call search and rescue campers in shorts during a blizzard, base jumper misjudging his leap from a treacherous granite cliff face, an ill-equipped snowmobiler buried up to his neck in an avalanche. So a bunch of fucking idiots who are just like, I'm tired of this city, I'm just gonna go walk out in the woods, and are completely not prepared. Now, I will say that I do suffer from being unprepared a lot, but I'm getting better. It's one of those things where, the older you get, the better you get, and I don't qualify myself in the pandemic wilderness explorers necessarily, but, man, the amount of dummies that are just getting lost in the woods, it's not supposed to be funny, right? It's not supposed to be funny. Practice reading maps. Make sure you're good at walking first before you go out there. Make sure you have water. Make sure you have a first aid kit. Make sure you have some sort of way to keep warm if you get lost. Just make sure you know where you're going. That's a huge one. Man, read maps or something. I saw this headline, and I'm not going to lie. I LOL'd so hard. Because, these things come for a reason. When I saw it in my head, I was like, oh, this isn't this is just for fun on the internet. Like, people don't really think this stuff. And it has to do with conspiracy theories. It has to do with the vaccines. And I'm not trying to rample feathers. I don't really care anymore. But what I will say is if you think that vaccines are connecting you to the internet, I don't know, man, that seems like a problem. This is an actual question on one of those, I think it's an Australian government website, health.gov.au. And the headline, is it true? Can COVID-19 vaccines connect me to the internet? No, they cannot connect you to the internet. Man, here's the thing. It's one of those things where, because I think every conspiracy theory and every kind of conspiracy theory, most people, maybe I'm not most people. Clearly, I'm not most people. But you're like, what if it is true? What if getting a vaccine really did give you 5G and connect you to the internet? That would be amazing, actually. Fuck yeah. Let's do that. Connect me to the internet. Man, some things I wish were true, just so everybody would shut the fuck up. Speaking of people shutting up. If this person hears this, it's nothing personal. It's just I like this person, but we were having massive disagreements. And I'm talking about a listener that was on my radio show. I'm not going to say his name, but for years this dude listened to my show. A huge Metallica fan, so we were always vibing on Metallica. He actually hooked me up with a lot of Metallica things, like this USB with all these live performances that I used from the Metallica-thon. It was awesome. This was a loyal listener for years and years and years, who apparently had never heard me before. Because when I got close to leaving the radio station, there was a couple times where I was talking about and busting balls on just regular news topics. In this particular instance, I was equating Rob Halford with Lil Nas X. Now here's how, because Rob Halford dressed like all the leather and chains and whips and things on stage, so he got that from the gay clubs in England. That's how gay men were dressing in England in the 70s or whatever. And then heavy metal fans and some of the most macho music fans of all time were dressing like Rob Halford and having no idea that they were dressing and influenced dressing like a gay man. So that was my equation, that Lil Nas X was the new Rob Halford for country music fans, because he was pissing off so many country music fans. I thought it was hilarious, because when metal fans found out Rob Halford was gay, it was, oh my God, we've been dressing like this guy this whole time. But I made that equation. I said Lil Nas X is the new Rob Halford. Clearly, I was not talking about Rob Halford I was not equating Lil Nas X as a great rock star like Rob Halford, or being nearly as talented vocally as Rob Halford. And this listener got so pissed off. He's like, Smitty, I'm done listening. I'll never listen to another thing again. That was too far. I'm like, what are you talking about? Have you not heard me for the last 12 years on the radio? I thought about that because I saw a video of Post Malone covering Bob Dylan, and I'm like, you know what? Post Malone might be the rock and roll hero we need right now. I know I took that long-ass story to get to that part, but Post Malone might be the rock and roll hero we need right now. I tried to listen to his regular music, Post Malone, because all of the rock shit that Post Malone does is great. All of the covers he does, the Nirvana covers, he did all kinds of stuff. And really talented. He gets that vibe 100%. But he chooses to make, like, at least to me, like some of the worst music. Like auto-tune music to me is just, I can't wrap my head around it. I know a lot of people like it, and I'm not trying to dog anybody out like that. But I tried to listen to some of it because I like Post Malone's rock stuff so much, and I'm like, oh, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. But if he chooses to do rock and roll, he might be the hero we need right now for rock and roll because it needs heroes. I will say I did listen to, really started to fall in love with Andy Clark. Not Andy Clark, she's the main songwriter as far as I know, and St. Vincent, and guitar player in the band St. Vincent. But if you've never listened to St. Vincent, it's really like, it's really arty rock. A lot of electronic influence, poppy, leans really poppy, but that Andy Clark, such a really good guitar player, great riffs, great songwriting and grooves, leads pop. But if you like some of that different kind of stuff, St. Vincent's is super rad. Either way, can we get a rock and roll hero? I don't care who it is. Can somebody, make this shit big again? All right, let's do a segment called Things I Learned Today. All right, things I learned today. I learned about the term knock her up. Knock her up. Not like knock her up and get her pregnant. No, I don't know why this was hilarious to me. And it's interesting because it's in Britain and Ireland, and I'm going to Ireland. I don't know when it started, but it ended in the 1940s and 50s, and knock her up was a job that you would have because clocks weren't reliable and alarms weren't reliable, and your job was to just walk around and, hey, wake up! That was your job. Honestly, I would love the idea. If people want me to wake them up, that could be a job. You don't have to go to their house, but I'll call you. I'll call you and wake you up. If you want to spend money, man, get woke up by Smitty every day. $20 a month. Boom. Hit that up on Patreon. And oh boy, look at the time. Time for your brand new 420 break.
Should I be getting paid for this, boys? Water bomb so smooth you don't realize how high you're getting. Till it's too late. I am fucked up out here.
Is it possible to be a completely different person than you were 20 years ago? Sometimes I don't even recognize myself. And I'm not even talking about how fat my ass is anymore. It's like I have two asses now. It's fucking horrible. I was sitting in my garage the other day and listening to Willie Nelson, smoking a bowl, thinking about all of the things. All of the things. Things I was doing, things I left behind, things I was going to do. And not only did I have no regrets, I was among the happiest I've almost ever been. The very idea of doing the things I've wanted to do my whole life only seemed like a dream before, and quite frankly, if 18-year-old me saw 45-year-old me sitting in my garage listening to Willie Nelson, high, contemplating his future, he'd be completely disappointed in me. Look at that old fucking stoner, he'd say. More proof 18-year-old me didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Now, I wasn't at my happiest because I was high as fucking daydreaming. No, I've done that a lot. It was when I finally decided to turn the dreams into reality. That's a huge liberator, and if you're not used to the feeling, it just makes you smile like a gigantic dummy everywhere you go. Just smiling at everything, smiling at everybody. It's one of the positives about wearing a mask in public, so people can't see me looking like a fucking idiot. Nope, just really happy. Honestly, who am I, and where do I get off being this happy? So now the journey starts and the work begins. I'm a firm believer, if you do the work, lay a good foundation, and believe in yourself, good things will happen. It took about 40 years to believe in myself, give or take, and I'm not all the way there yet, but you keep growing and keep getting better at whatever you're doing. If you can do what you love and have something to show for your work that you can be proud of, you'll be a success. I don't care how much money you have in your bank account. Money does fucking help, though. Well, there you go. That's your 420 break. Now you feel normal. And I want to thank everybody for checking out brand new What the Hell Everything with Smitty every Tuesday and Thursday again on YouTube. Like it, subscribe to it, follow on Facebook, We Three Smiths. Make sure you follow that and give it a view. Again, hit up the Patreon page if you're interested in the 5-year plan and supporting the 5-year plan. I could not be more stoked to be doing this podcast for you. And remember, Friday night on Facebook Live, we'll have phones going. If you're interested, you want to follow along, I'm going to keep trying to entertain you if you want to keep watching and listening. So this is where I'll be on the internets. What the hell, everything. What the hell, everything?